am absolutely out of my mind because when I watch Star Wars, I'm often watching it literally frame by frame. I just love finding all sorts of fun little details that I had never noticed before. And while I've brought a few of these to attention with my mystery ship videos and my expose on the Radio Free Bolinas sticker or the land speeder with wheels in the Phantom Menace, I've actually been slowly accumulating a list of all sorts of extremely obscure Star Wars trivia. But before I jump into that, real quick, we are right now in the middle of funding our Star Wars fan film, Trial on the Island Moon. We are running a Kickstarter campaign and we've got just about 10 days remaining. Every little bit of support helps. If that sounds like something that you would like to see come to fruition, head on over to Kickstarter and help make that film a reality. The link's in the description. And back to the show. So starting with the original film, it would seem that the group of Jawas that come to the Lars homestead had a human in their midst. We can clearly see an exposed face and hands here. This is not a Jawa, but is decidedly human in appearance. It would seem that at least in rare cases, we can expect to find other species on Jawa sandcrawler crews. Jawas and humans do seem to have fairly friendly interactions, so it wouldn't be too surprising. Moving on to the Mos Eisley Cantina, which is an absolute treasure trove of interesting things to notice, but one thing really stands out. So, Attack of the Clones might have been the first time we heard the term death sticks, but the act itself started in the very first film, and the Mos Eisley Cantina, we can just barely see a patron indulging this particular vice. The secondary exhaust port on the Death Star has some recognizable features, and we can see the exact same details in the super laser tunnel. That's because this tunnel miniature was one and the same with the exhaust port miniature, only with lights added and using mirrors to create an infinity effect to make the tunnel look like it was stretching off into the void. In my opinion, they've done a really good job recontextualizing this miniature to the point where the conscious mind doesn't even notice, but we just implicitly understand that the architecture is consistent. The ILM model makers knew what they were doing. So moving on into the final battle of the film, there's a really interesting continuity error that isn't really a continuity error at all. So you know Luke's iconic helmet. Well, when we first see Luke suited up in his pilot gear, talking with Han Solo, he's carrying a completely different helmet. But when he's talking with Leia, he has what we understand as his proper helmet. Now, normally this would be a continuity error, like Mark Hamill was just given the wrong prop in that earlier bit of the scene. But there's actually quite a bit of time between the two conversations, where Luke is completely off screen. Maybe he noticed it was defective or too small or who knows. But if we take the scene as canon, Luke must swap out his helmet off screen at some point. Now I want to rewind to that Han Solo conversation and linger on it just a little bit longer, because this little conversation is just crammed with all sorts of fun details in the background. For instance, we see this rebel technician pushing a piece of equipment on an everyday hand truck. And if we look really closely at the top of the droid loading crane, we can see that it's actually an inverted and repainted reuse of the unusual spherical speeder that was in front of the Mos Eisley Cantina. Moving on to The Empire Strikes Back, we not only have another bit of helmet trivia, but also another reuse of props trivia. Lots of the helmets in The Empire Strikes Back are reused helmets from the Battle of Yavin, but one stands out because here we can see a rebel pilot wearing the very same helmet that Luke trained with on the Millennium Falcon, easily identified by its stylish alien text markings. Now this is obviously just getting additional use out of a costume piece, but it does raise some fun questions. Did Han Solo actually donate this helmet to the cause, or are these helmet markings not entirely unique and have wider use in the galaxy? It's interesting to think about. Okay, so now we're into the Battle of Hoth. I've already talked about stuff like the cannon sleds in a previous video, but there are also a lot of other things to notice, like this trooper wearing a knit scarf rather than his uniform scarf. But what really kind of blew my mind watching this scene recently is this. So during the Rebels' retreat, if we look really closely, we can still see Rebel soldiers in the trenches. And not only are they not retreating, but they're actually facing away from the walker. That is, it looks like they're aiming at their own men. Now that could be a really interesting topic for a canonical discussion, but I actually want to tackle this from a production perspective. That's because in this shot, the rebels are not meant to be retreating, but rather advancing. There's a scene that's attested in storyboards, but didn't make it to the screen after Wedge downs the first walker, where some rebel soldiers charge the tripped walker to do battle with emerging Imperial troopers. That sequence was obviously cut, but the vestiges remain in the final film, such as this shot of troops advancing and then this shot of the rebels running out of the trenches, which was clearly flipped, with walkers added behind them to give the impression of retreating. So now we're on to Cloud City. One fun thing to spot is the Star Tours shuttle that was added in the special edition. And another fun thing to notice is that almost every single civilian in Cloud City, with very few exceptions, is carrying some kind of white-colored hand prop. It must be a cultural thing there. And while watching the citizens of Cloud City closely, I noticed that we can see what looks like a school class with their teacher deep in the background. And while this is not an unexpected detail in a civilian location, it is notable as one of the very few times that we canonically see children in the original trilogy. I think the only other examples would be the baby Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. Moving along, here we can actually see a second carbon freezing chamber deep in the background, implying a much more expansive complex than the immediate set, and directly contradicting the cross-sections we get of this area in the Essential Locations book, which only really has room for one freezing chamber. So let's jump forward to Return of the Jedi. This movie has a lot of something that I really like in Star Wars, which is that very grounded nuts and bolts protocol sort of stuff, like transmissions and docking procedures and stuff like that. And in light of that, it's interesting to notice stuff like how the blinking light patterns work on the Imperial shuttles. These sorts of blinking lights are not common on Star Wars ships, but we see it here, and it gives these ships a very real-world aircraft sort of vibe, which is found elsewhere in Return of the Jedi. For instance, the X-Wing acquires the red-green navigational lights on its wingtips, which is also akin to real-world aircraft. But what's really interesting is that the light blinking sequences on the Imperial shuttle are actually different based on what the ship is doing. So when we see Vader's shuttle opening its wings, we get a unique 3-strobe sequence before the normal blinking pattern. And as Vader lands on Endor later in the film, we see that the blinking lights turn solid as the shuttle closes its wings. Similarly, the flashing lights on the landing platform turn solid as the shuttle touches down. There's really no storytelling benefit to the ILM effects team coming up with different light sequences for this ship, and hardly anybody would ever notice. But it's stuff like this that really elevates the universe of the films. The Lambda shuttle isn't meant to be some fantastic fictional vehicle. It's meant to feel like real technology, and stuff like this, even if you don't consciously notice it, really hammers that home. So I have already done helmet trivia for the previous 2 films, so I might as well just keep it up. So normally I would talk about the radio-free Bolinas sticker here, but like I mentioned earlier, I already did a whole video on that. It's a fascinating bit of lore. I encourage you to watch it if you haven't seen it. But in general, the Rebel helmets in Return of the Jedi are really interesting. We got new styles and lots of new imagery too. There's a lot more text on the helmets, for instance. As far as I know, this is all in an untranslatable, unknown language, but it's cool to draw attention to it nonetheless. We also get some interesting symbols too. This Batwing emblem really caught my eye because it looks like it has a stylized variant of the Alliance Starbird crest in its center. Maybe this is the logo of his local Alliance cell? Another really interesting bit of helmet trivia is this marking on the Scout Trooper helmets. This actually isn't just some random symbol, but is actually the personal logo of ILM artist Peter A. Ronzani, who primarily worked on fabricating armor for this film. Here he's pictured working on a Scout Trooper costume with Nilo Rotis. If we look closely at the symbol, we can see that it is a stylized combination of the letters P, A, and R, Peter A. Ronzani. Heading onto the Battle of Endor, this scene is no exception for having tons of cool things to notice. For instance, the presence of Nebulon B frigates, both with and without that big iconic vertical portion. So that means that this and this are both perfectly acceptable canonical variants of the ship. And the coolness goes beyond simply what ships are at the battle, but how the ships behave. For instance, as the rebels are flying into the Death Star superstructure, if we look really closely, we can actually see Wedge close his S-foils to squeeze through that narrow portion that claims the Falcon's antenna. Now, near the end of the film, we get that awesome Ewok horn blast. The sound effect for these horns is actually taken from the 1956 film The Ten Commandments. Star Wars taking inspiration from classic biblical epics would come up again in The Phantom Menace, with the pod race taking very overt cues from the 1959 film Ben-Hur. So that's just a taste of the sorts of things that I'm analyzing when I'm watching Star Wars. I'm glad I got to share this stuff with you, and I hope that at least one thing on my list was new to you. I still have a lot more things I could talk about, and if you guys want to see another video like this, I could probably do another one like this on the original trilogy, and probably another one about the prequels as well. And just let me know. Before I go, I'd like to remind you that we're running a Kickstarter campaign right now for our new Star Wars fan film, Trial on the Island Moon. This is a unique project that I'm really excited about. It's a story of survival on a a wild and perilous world full of mystery and danger, and it gets deep into some core Star Wars themes, but in a way that doesn't rely on any established lore. There's really nothing quite like it. We're just shy of halfway to our goal, and we still have about 10 days to go, but as per the Kickstarter formula, if we don't reach our goal, we don't get any of the funding. So if this sounds like something that you would like to see completed, we need your help. So head on over to Kickstarter and pledge your support today. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.